Please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Bach?
Here.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Lemke?
Here.
Commissioner Gentes?
Here.
Commissioner Hawley?
Here.
Commissioner Chorin?
Here.
Alderman Stralchuk?
Here.
Mayor Nurbin?
Here. We have a quorum. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from April 25th.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Next, we have public hearing and consent. The first item on the agenda there is Arc Central LLC. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant to allow approval for an accessory dwelling unit for the property located at 10564 West Sunset Woods Lane. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Any comments from anyone? Motion to close?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are out of public hearing. Next item is Mequon Storage. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant amendment to building and site plan to allow for 2 storage buildings at the property located at 6829 through 7033 West Narnges Bay Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We're in public hearing. Is there any comment from the public on anything? I'll catch it. Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Motion is second. All in favor of exiting public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back out of public hearing. There was a late entry for the first item in support from Cassie and Andy Corey for the Arc Central LLC at 10564 West Sunset Woods Lane. They are in support, but did not wish to speak. Just wanted that to enter into the record. The next item on the consent agenda is James Schneider for Lewinauer. The applicant is seeking a certified survey map approval for 2-lot land subdivision at 2015 and 2049 West Martin Way and 13804 North Martin Way. Those are the items on the consent agenda. Would we like to take them up together, or would anyone like something removed?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as shown with all 3 items.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's call the roll on the consent agenda.
Okay. Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Lemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Gentes?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin?
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk?
Aye.
Mayor Nurbin?
Aye. And I'm going to pause and note that there is someone from Mequon Storage here who may like to speak, unless you're happy with what we just voted on.
Yes.
Okay. If you weren't, I would reconsider and take it up again, but I didn't want to presume. So all 3 of those items are approved. Congratulations. We will now enter public hearing. The first item on public hearing is Jeremy Wilmot for Cheddarhead Holdings. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant approval for a fast food restaurant for the property located at 10990 North Port Washington Road for a Jersey Mike's Subs. Could we perhaps get a quick report from Assistant Director Zader?
Did you want to do the public hearing first?
Oh, sure. You're right, it is public hearing.
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. There's motion is second. Vote to go into public hearing. Everyone say aye that supports. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in public hearing. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. Is there a motion to close?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor of closing public hearing? Say
Aye.
Aye. We are out of public hearing. Now, Assistant Director Stater. Thank you.
This is a request for Jersey Mike's to go into the pavilions. This is in the former, half of the former Honan site. Relatively straightforward. There was also an expansion to an outdoor section as a patio. Staff did just add one condition. I have some pictures up here that were in the packet to show you. The patio extended basically be almost in line with this light pole. And our request is to bring the patio back in line with the end of the building, basically following that expansion joint of the concrete. We want to make sure there's enough room in here for pedestrians to walk through the site. So we're just, as a conditional approval, we're just recommending that this fence be on the inside of that light pole. Other than that, standard conditions, if there's one doorway being added to the interior where the window is right now, we asked that just match the existing architecture. Other than that, we recommend approval.
Thank you. Any comments from the applicant?
No, those conditions are acceptable to us.
Perfect. We'll take it back to the commission then. Is there any comments? Commissioner Strelchuk?
I think that this space has gone vacant long enough, and I'm really glad to see another restaurant come into that space. Without apology, I have a 14-year-old son that is like literally cheering in the background. His favorite place is Jersey Mike's, and we drive down to the New Berlin location all the time, so I know that you're a quality restaurant and you have a quality clientele. I think the pavilion is a great space for this type of restaurant, so I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Second. You get approval pending with staff.
Pending all staff recommendations.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation from the commission? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Next item on the agenda is Jilly's Car Wash. The applicant is seeking a conditional use grant for a building and site plan approval to allow for a car wash facility for the proposed, or for the property at 10829 North Port Washington Road.
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing, and we do have a number of comment cards, so we'll take them in the order I got them here. First, we have Michael D. Stenton opposes and wishes to speak. He's from 1431 West Winding Hollow Lane in Mequon.
Great, thank you. I'm a board member at Winding Hollow, which is an adjacent property to the site that they want to build a car wash. Our property actually wraps around, so it's pretty close proximity to where they want to build the Jilly's. In addition to that, it is a pretty heavily populated residential area. In addition to the Winding Hollow homes, you have the Cedarhurst Senior Living, the Oakwood Apartments, and then last you have a daycare, which you could throw a stone and hit it with. So we hear a ton of traffic from 43 on most nights, depending on which way the wind blows. Obviously it wouldn't be favorable to us from a noise perspective. I mean, we've had the credit union move in over there in the new development, and also too, I think they're putting in a restaurant. But the neighbors are very concerned about the noise. The decimal limit of 70 is not acceptable to us. It's higher than other communities and residential areas. I think the Brookfield has a limit of 45 to 55 on their decimal. Loud music has been a problem at the Glendale location. In fact, they actually put up a sign there. And, you know, we feel that in this, especially in this day and age, trying to enforce laws and lack of respect for laws in society in general, I don't know how you would enforce such a noise complaint time and time again, especially with youth. So that's a concern for the residents as well. Proposed hours are from 7 to 8 p.m. That's pretty early and pretty late. And again, in the daytime, if you have children napping, I don't know how they would nap with the noise, quite frankly. So we would oppose the noise. We'd certainly, some of these locations, I don't know if this one is coming up with piped in music, but we would certainly be against piped music. And then constant running of power vacuums is a concern for us as well. They can tend to be very noisy. And last, I mean, there's entrance and exit doors. I don't know if they would close for the car wash, but that limits some of the sound as well. Not sure in the plan if that's in there or not. So the general concern again is noise, that location. 2 other car washes are on the other side, the mobile, which is towards 43. There's no residents there. And the other, what's the name of that again? Shell. That's back on 43 as well, next to Metro, so not near residential neighborhoods. There's plenty of other site locations, empty buildings on 43 they could look at that would be basically east of 43 in a non-residential area. So we would oppose that based on the noise and the number of residents living near this location. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stetson. Next, we have Elaine Myers opposes and wishes, it's not checked if she wishes to speak or not, but we'll give her the opportunity if she would like to. 1521 West Winding Hollow Lane. Take it that's on wishes not to speak. Next, there's Gary Balzarak, opposes and wishes to speak. 1451 West Winding Hollow Lane.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the Planning Commission, for this opportunity. As you mentioned, I'm Gary Balzarak, and I'm the resident owner and a representative of the Winding Hollow condominiums located approximately 500 feet from the proposed car wash. As the petition included in tonight's packet includes 100% of the condominium resident owners that are in the country or are in the state, we are against approval of this conditional use plan and urge you to vote against it. We feel that there are several issues that the proposal does not adequately address. The first one being, we believe that the proposed use does endanger public safety and general welfare in the immediate neighborhood. The senior citizens who reside at Oakwood Senior Living Apartments, many who walk with walkers and canes, have no option but to use the service road that the car wash patrons would use to enter and exit the car wash. There's no sidewalk there for their safety, and they will have to dodge cars coming and going to their apartments. Additionally, the Ganami Early Childhood Education Center, located directly to the south, uses that private road along with Port Washington Road during the summer months to take children for walks throughout the day. Traffic on these same roads will cause concerns for them. Second, we strongly feel that the proposed use is not harmonious or compatible with the area. The constant noise from the water pumps, hydraulics, air dryers, blowers, and vacuum motors will cause significant noise pollution. While it is recommended that noise level shall not exceed 70 decibels at the property line, this is too high. Ordinances for car washes start at the 50 decibel level. Speaking to Larry Gowdy, Brookfield Zoning and Building Administrator, their enforceable decibel limit is between 45 and 55 decibels. No penalty or recourse for exceeding the decibel limit is included in the proposal. As Mike mentioned, currently we hear cars and trucks from 43, from Port Washington Road, Mequon Road, and these decibels typically range between the 70 and 80 range. We hear this noise well past the 500 feet all night long. Constant noise from a car wash in a closer proximity than these roads with a decibel limit of 70 is not acceptable. We feel that the proposed landscaping plan is also sorely inadequate to support this level of noise. A sound-absorbing barrier of solid fencing on the north, south, and west sides of the property with evergreen trees whose leaves remain intact for the entire year, not deciduous trees that absorb sound only, well, let's see, how long is our summer? 4 months, 3 months around here, are required. Again, the proposed hours of operation, 7 a.m. till 8:30 p.m. daily, are excessive to have to listen to this noise. A sign asking customers to refrain from playing music is not enforced and is of no value in this residential area. Thirdly and lastly, we feel that the proposed use will injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. The closest residential dwelling, 10851 North Port Washington Road, is just 30 feet from the property line, not, quote, over 500 feet from the proposed building. It is directly across. The private drive is the only thing that's separating the residential dwelling from the proposed car wash. While staff does not feel the proposed will have an impact, community development staff do not live in the immediate neighborhood. They do not have to hear the noise pollution that a car wash brings to our neighborhood 7 days a week. The resident owners have a vested interest in preserving and protecting the peace and quiet of the neighborhood, not in community development. Given two similarly valued properties, which would you choose? The one located in a peaceful, quiet neighborhood, or the one located near a noisy car wash? We have absolutely no animosity toward Jilly's. In fact, my household has a monthly membership at the Glendale location. We have nothing against another car wash in Mequon, even though there are, as our neighbors support the Shell and the mobile car washes, both less than a mile away. What we adamantly oppose is a car wash in this residential location. So on behalf of the 36 property owners at Winding Hollow Condominiums, the 40 residents of Oakwood Senior Living Apartments, the 44 residents plus of Mequon Court Apartments, the almost 100 residents of Cedarhurst Assisted Living Community who are less than 500 feet from the proposed car wash, and the residential property owners located at 10851 North Port Washington Road who are approximately 30 feet from the proposed car wash, we urge you to deny this request. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Balcerzak. Last card we have is from Howard Myers. It wishes to speak from 1521 West Winding Hollow Lane.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts. Thank you. I would like to refer you all to a restrictive and limited ordinance that this good community passed a while back, and it's Mequon Municipal Code Section 58-303. Its date version is 4/14/22. This restrictive ordinance reads, specific development and design standards is subject to certain restrictive language. The car wash facilities, which is referenced right there in those clear words, shall only be allowed as an accessory use to an existing gas station, and shall be limited, I emphasize the word shall again, to one drive bay. This local ordinance, reviewed as recently evidently by the city, has that data version, as I just mentioned, of 4/14/22. Reference to car wash facility includes mandatory language again, shall only be allowed to an existing gas station and shall be limited to a one drive bay. These two mandatory concepts are included in this ordinance with specific reference, again, to car wash facilities, and the language utilized is mandatory, not permissive or discretionary. I could spend some time giving you all the definition of shall, but let me just give you one section out of Webster's dictionary. This section says it's used in the record or third person, especially in formal speech or writing, to express determination, compulsion, and obligation, which I emphasize, or necessity. The common, clear definition of shall is a qualifier encompassing a mandatory requirement, not a discretionary one. Granted, there could be some conflicts in other ordinances, but I think it's essential that we take a look at that language which this community saw fit to place in their ordinances. And I think that the two mandatory provisions are not discretionary, which I've already mentioned. The criteria of this ordinance is not complied with unless a gas station exists in this defined area, which, as you all know, it doesn't. Now, the property the applicant is seeking to use for a car wash facility is to be located at 10829 North Port Washington Road. At this time, a school, AMI, has an early childhood education center for young children and is operating and is located at 10813 North Port Washington Road in Mequon. You can see the distance between the two is not very much. The proposed request evidences a closeness and proximity to an existing school, as I just mentioned, and this raises many concerns and questions for the safety of young children, teachers, and adults. In fact, the requested property in question would be adjacent to just north of the school for young children, teachers, and adults. The requested property for the car wash is really in a residential living area. We mentioned a few of the areas, but let me just repeat the areas that constitute residential living. West Winding Hollow Lane, as we've already mentioned, a 24-unit condominium community. Number 2, Cedarhurst, which has 87 units. Oakwood Apartments is composed of 40 units, and Mequon Court Apartments have 44 units, and there's an individual private home in that area, which is very close to the area in question. You know, the owners in Winding Hollow raised some other factors. They were concerned with noise concerns, traffic issues, air pollution, hours of operation, the value of the condos, and any of the ordinances that come into play here. In short, I will make my thoughts brief, but I want to just conclude with this, that the proposed use should be harmonious and compatible with the area in which it is situated. The area in dispute for a car wash operation is surrounded by condos, apartments, a school, and a senior living facility. As was already stated, we have no objection to a car wash facility, but only in an appropriate location and not close to the residential areas where the dispute is taking place. And I think it's essential that we do a little balancing act on both sides' interests, and also an interest in having a review of all of the necessary ordinances that exist in this good community. And I think a balance would indicate that another location would serve a more beneficial purpose for everybody. And I can only repeat what Gary said and Mike said, that our neighbors, we live in a very quiet neighborhood. We don't need any more noise, and I'm not disparaging at all this car wash operation. I know it's a good one, but I think that is something that we hope you'll consider and allow us to maybe have the opportunity to consider maybe some other location, and then maybe there may be some support gathered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak that didn't register? Could do so at this time. Please just state your name and your address, and we'll get that written into the record.
Good evening. Jared Protaski, owner of 10911 North Port Washington Road and the surrounding properties. I represent Mequon 1 LLC and Mequon 2 LLC, owners of the property in the shopping center. Here on behalf tonight of Jilly's, who is looking to purchase this parcel of property from us. In 2018, when we began the rezoning process of the 9 acres that were rezoned to B2 PUD, operations like Jilly's is exactly what we envisioned being here on the property. Locally owned operations, conscientious owners that understand the community that they're growing up in, and the people that are around them. You know, I know John was concerned about some of the neighbors' concerns as they arose here during the process, and I don't know that I've ever seen a business owner speak to those concerns with more passion of how he operates his business. So I think that speaks a lot about the operator and who's moving into the neighborhood. From a design standpoint, I think they've gone above and beyond to try to meet Mequon standards, to present a great building that presents well from Port Washington Road. In reality, here to support John and his operations here as they seek to locate onto our property. And again, when we sought to rezone this to B2, these are the types of uses that we really look forward to joining the community here and being part of the commercial corridor that is Port Washington Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in public hearing? If not, I'll look for a motion to close.
So moved.
A motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
You're closed or for public hearing. Who wants to go first? Would Assistant Director Zader like to go?
Sure.
Address some of the things we heard in public hearing?
Yeah, I can. I was going to put on some the map for you to see, or some context as well. A couple of things. First, the section that was referred to, the 58303, those design standards were created with regard to the town center and rival corridor. The car wash language that you see in there was actually meant to protect the existing mobile before it was moved. The old Legion, now it's a new Legion. At one point they were looking to do a car wash, so we added that language to protect an existing business but not allow any new businesses in there. So those design standards that are in that section refer to only rival corridor and town center. Now, in terms of the area, I just want to kind of zoom out a little bit and give you just kind of a bird's eye view of the area. I'm going to put on the zoning map for you as well. So basically, the area we're talking about is right in this area here. So when we did the rezoning a number of years ago, this portion all was institutional zoning. We rezoned this section to B2 with the PUD. At the time, we did limit this back portion, and I'm going to turn the zoning off again now. So we did limit this back parcel, which is located in the back here, to certain uses. We wouldn't allow restaurants or other high volume retail because of the closeness to the Winding Hollow property. But the properties in the front at the time of the rezoning, we made it clear to the Planning Commission and to the council that they would be allowed any right uses under the B2 under permitted or conditional. So that's where the car wash falls in. And then when you look at the zoning map, again, we use a buffer technique here that basically the B2 is buffered by the IPS, which is then buffered by the R6, which is our 2-family, and then our single family down in here. I don't think any of you were here at the time when Winding Hollow was approved, but if you were, the number of the residents here did not want to see 2 units up here because they wanted single family, and at the time we explained the 2-family is a buffer to the commercial corridor to the north and to the west, And so this is just following, typical land use patterns of now having a institutional buffer and then a buffer to the commercial area in the front along Port Washington Road. So that's a little bit more in terms of the background. In terms of the specifics, I'll zoom into the site itself. The one gentleman did reference there is a house. I don't know if it's is currently used as a house, but there is a parcel back in here that is a single family, but it is zoned IPS. It is an institutionally zoned parcel, which I assume at one point will turn over into some sort of institutional use, but currently I believe it is still a house. I don't know if it's I don't think it's owner occupied. I think one of the developers that worked on a former project actually purchased that. So, but other than that property, the remaining properties, the two families are approximately about 500 feet away. So this is the site itself. I just want to give you some context. It doesn't necessarily show what's surrounded. The Landmark Credit Union is obviously up in this area here, and this is the private road that serves the site as well as the development to the rear. So with that, I'm going to go back to the packet. So this is probably the best view on the screen of the development. This is the landscape plan, but it does show a lot of the details. So basically, you have the building, and we worked with the applicant on at least 4 or 5 iterations of this plan, and we tried to get the building pushed forward as close as we could to Port Washington Road. We worked on, trying to get the placement of all the equipment and everything with regard to the entranceway to the back shielded from view. We feel that this placement, that's probably the best you're going to get on this site. Is a really tough site. It's a small site. This part was part of the PUD, but it really was already pretty much an existing entity on its own because of the bifurcation of the shared driveway. So this does comply with all the district regulations other than the open space ratio and the minimum lot area and width, which were all accounted for through the PUD process. Overall, the whole entire development has to meet the 40% open space ratio. This parcel itself is about 36.6, but when you add up all the other parcels, we still have that parcel to the back that's vacant. They'll well exceed the 40% for the entire development. So we're not too concerned about that. It does meet all the other requirements. There was a lot of questions and discussions about noise. I did have our code enforcement officer go out over the last few days, take sound readings in the area. The ambient noise level at this property right now falls anywhere between 62 and 100 decibels, depending on traffic. The quietest it gets is like when there's no traffic down Port Road, it's still around 62. When there's, you can get semis on I-43 braking, you can get that up to about 100. So the 50 decibel for the car wash would be very difficult to even measure out there because the ambient noise is so much higher. The 70 is what we required for the Quick Trip gas station. And I think you could go down maybe 65, but anything lower than that, I think you're running into issues with just ambient noise being louder than what this car wash is going to provide. I know the owner, I did talk to him about the list that was in the packet with regard to some of the other changes, and I know he's willing to address a number of those issues and go over them with you, so we'll wait on that until I'll let him speak, and then we can talk about some of these issues specifically. Other than that, in terms of the site plan, we've worked on everything. I have samples up here for the colored brick and block if you want to see those. I do have some window treatments that I wanted to show you a little bit that were omitted from the packet. They're using a spandrel glass treatment. I did share this with one of the architects. So this is the bird's eye view facing the building. This is the north side of the building. So these areas here will have a spandrel glass treatment basically, and the transoms above, and then everything else will be clear. And so I just want to give you a perspective, because I apologize, this was supposed to be the packet, it wasn't. But this is kind of what that would look like nighttime view. It's really hard to see, but you can see the lower panels, this kind of looks a little bit frosted, and the upper panel you can actually see through. But in the daytime, it's almost non-discernible, and at nighttime you'll see a little bit of a change. But the areas that are being shown on the glass will not be illuminated at night, so you really won't really see that even shining through at that point. So I just want to give you a little perspective on that because it was not in the packet. Other than that, we made some recommendations. There was a comment about landscaping. We did ask them to address the southern property line buffer with some landscaping. The lighting plan, there was a couple of things in there we recommended. They've already actually sent me some updated plans that addresses those issues. The hours of operation somebody brought up, those are pretty consistent with what's in that area right now. I mean, permitted uses are allowed to be open almost 24 hours if they choose to be. We do have conditional uses and other conditional uses in the area, but none of them are restricted to the point where they're done by 6 p.m. or 4 p.m. on weekends. So that would be awfully a restrictive requirement for this type of use. Other than that, I guess I'll let the applicant speak, and then we can address any questions or comments that the commissioners have.
Thank you. And with that, let's kick it over to the applicant.
Thanks. My name's John Zimmerman. I'm the president of Jilly's Car Wash. My wife Jill, who the business is named after. We live in the North Shore. We've lived in the North Shore for over 20 years, and we come in peace. You know, our car washes, this would be our 5th one. So we have a car wash in Brookfield, Elm Grove, Pewaukee, and Glendale. So Mequon would be our 5th location. We have never had a noise issue in any community. And I'm going to address the sign that's talked about at the Glendale location. But we have had 0 noise issues. And I will say that when it comes to resident proximity, other than Elm Grove, this is the farthest of the 500 feet as far as where the citizens are concerned. That's the farthest of any of them. In Brookfield, which is mentioned, which I did not know that there was a 50 or 45 decibel limit there. We are right on top of residential. We are right on Capitol Road, right next to residential. We have never had a noise complaint. The only noise complaint we've ever had was an email from Glendale sent to me saying that a customer who was waiting in line was blasting their music while waiting in line. What can we do about it? That's the reason you want Jilly's Car Wash in Mequon, because Jill and I live in the community. What we did about it was we put a sign up asking our employees, well, first put a sign up asking our customers not to blast their music. Second of all, we trained our employees that if a customer was blasting their music, to please tell them to stop. No problem since then. We're local. We live here. We want these people as our customers. So we've had 0 noise complaints. I don't know if anyone is interested, here's a letter from the mayor of Mequon highly endorsing us. Sorry, Glendale. Sorry.
Well, they're going to say it had to be the old one.
Here's a letter from Brian Kennedy highly endorsing us of our activities. Let's talk about safety for traffic. We are not a Chick-fil-A. Let me make that very clear. I think car washes get a bad rap. And the reason for that is 5 days a year when it snows and it's sunny and everyone wants to get their car washed, we are busy. But if you look at a location like this, in order to be successful, I need to average about 26 cars an hour. So that would be a very successful operation at this location. Our traffic is very, very manageable year-round. 5 days a year, everyone wants to get their car washed. Probably no different than what Stein's Garden across the street sees come Memorial Day. It's a zoo, right? Most of the year, everything moves through. I also have a letter here from the JCC. They have no issues with us moving in next door. Mark, the president, was in full support of us coming in. As far as the ambient music that we play, I have no issues not playing at this location. If that's an issue, I have none. But let me explain why we do it. We do it because what I found was people played their own music. So when I played music, right, it kind of discouraged them from playing their own music. So if the commission is going to ask us not to play our piped-in music, because with the piped-in music, we put up a ton of little speakers so we can play it softly, so we can meet the noise requirements in the area. No issues. We don't need the music. Customers do like it, but if you find it, if it makes the community feel more comfortable, I have 0 issues doing it. I just think it's in everyone's best interest for us to do it. The vacuums go on and off as requested. So we have loops underneath. The vacuums don't just run constantly. The vacuums only run when they're in use. So that concern is something that we already meet. The doors opening and closing, I think I don't think that the noise inside the building is nothing. I mean, my employees working there, we don't wear headsets. A lot of employees listen to their own music, but the noise that's inside the building is encapsulated in that building. I have no problem opening and closing the doors in between cars, except in the summertime. In the summertime, that would create a very unsafe working condition for my employees when it's so hot to think that they're going to be able to operate with those doors down. In the wintertime, those doors always go up and down between cars for the comfort of the employees. But, you know, we have no problem meeting the 70 decibel level at our property line. We had planned that. So we had planned that when we came to this location that we were going to do a completely different drying system. So we are either going to use a different drying system or we're going to build the exit of the tunnel differently, because that's the loudest part really of what we bring to the table is the exit. So we have options, we just haven't decided which one we were going to take yet. But even with my current environment, we can meet your 70 decibel requirement. We want to come to Mequon. I think we are, you know, I can say that of all the locations I've had, I have never received as many emails as I have from Mequon community members when I opened up Glendale asking us to come to Mequon. That's why we're here. We had a lot of choices for where we were going next. We're privately funded. It's just my wife and I. So we can't build 10 of these at a time. We live in Whitefish Bay. We like to be close to home. And we had so much outreach from your community. That's why we chose to come here. We're building a building that looks like it's 2 stories, not because we want to, but we felt that was a beautiful looking building that was 2 stories, that would look like an office building and would fit in well to the community. Anything I'm missing here? Chris is the architect on the project from Brian Hill.
Thanks, John. Just one real quick clarification on the glass. Thank you for explaining that, Jack. So we're not proposing spandrel, we're proposing a satin etch finish. So it's still translucent and it lets, as Jack mentioned, light in and out. Whereas a typical spandrel glass will have like a back of paint on it. It's completely opaque. I brought along a couple small samples. So this is this is clear glass, and this is a satin etch. It's basically a clear glass with a frit on the surface 3, which when it's a double pane. So, at night, it looks like it's glowing glass. During the day, it looks like normal glass. It's just, it obscures the view into what will be a mechanical space on that north side of the building.
Right, thank you. Take it back to the commission here. Commissioner Bach.
Jack, did the owners meet with the neighbors in your deliberations, or did they listen to them and make concessions? Were there any discussions, or was this just between you and the applicant?
Well, we got the information from the neighborhood, the 8 points, shortly before the meeting, so there wasn't a time, I don't think, for the neighbors and the applicants to meet. I just spoke with them today in the morning to go over the conditions to see if he had any questions or concerns, or how he felt about some of them, and I think we've addressed the issue of the constant running of the power vacuums and the piped-in music in the door entranceway, things like that. So again, I think the difficult thing is the hours of operation. I think that what they're requesting is pretty restrictive for this area, and I think the 50 decibels is very difficult. I didn't find it of the Brookfield one. I actually found City of Los Angeles requires 50 decibels when it's adjacent to a single-family home, but there was actually a sound study done on one of their stations in Sherman Oaks, and they had the same issue where they couldn't even get readings because the ambient noise in the area was well above 50. So I just think that's too low. Again, and just so for my reference, we've allowed 65 decibels for like generators, things like that at the property line for other developments. And then we do have a speaker requirement after 9 p.m. for the fast foods. That's in the 30 decibel range, but that's at the property line as well. So, and that was meant for like the Arby's and the Taco Bell, where you had adjacent residential, you didn't want the speaker volume cranked, but that only kicks in like after a certain time frame. So So those were the issues we really talked about. I don't think there was time for a dialogue between the owners and the residents to have any discussion about these items specifically.
Thank you. Mayor.
Mr. Chorin.
Explain to me how the vac system, is that within the building or outside the building, or where are they?
The vacs are outside, right? So we have a central vac unit that supplies vacuums so that there's vacuums
Right.
on both sides of your vehicle. So the vacuums are outside, so you pull into a stall. The vacuums are free when you buy a car wash.
So once you exit the car wash, you come around into that area?
In this design, you can either exit and leave, or you can go vacuum your vehicle.
Okay. And secondly, with regards to landscaping and grading to address the noise, there is some landscaping. I see that some landscaping was added on the south primarily to obscure the view, but what was done on the west, I think there's a slight berm, isn't there, Jack? Is there any landscaping on the top?
On the west portion,
Yeah.
there's a number of trees here, but again, these are more deciduous. I mean, if you're looking for a little bit more sound protection there, we would have to have that redone and maybe do some row of evergreens if sound is a concern. I think that would be a better approach than a fence.
Would Gillies be receptive to that?
Yeah, landscaping is no issues.
Okay.
None at all.
Yeah, anything that can be done to help the noise. I mean, I live quite a ways from 43, and at night I can hear it. And I don't know if that's because all the ash trees are gone, but anything we can do to help cut down some of the sound would be good. So I would suggest two things. Adjusting the landscaping plan to have some landscape to block the noise, and then no ambient music. So,
Commissioner Strelchak.
The alderman from the district and I chatted before this, and his major concern mirrored what the residents came forward with, and that was the noise levels. He did ask me to listen closely to the discussion on decibel rating. I personally wouldn't mind seeing that go down to 65, and I wouldn't mind seeing that be a benchmark for the city moving forward. I mirror Commissioner Chorin's statement with the ambient music. I just don't think that residents, if they can hear the music, want to hear the music from an adjoining business throughout the entire hours of operation. I know it's a positive for your customers and it creates an ambiance, and it's something that you do, but I think there's enough residential concern here.
No issues. We don't need those.
Okay. That's an addressable point. I also mirror the recommendation to put evergreens on the side of the property, again, to mitigate what happens with the sound as it's going to the property line. I think that's going to add not a lot to expense. If anything, it might save you a little bit. I think evergreens are a little more readily available than some of these bigger canopy trees. And then I think that as they grow in, further addresses the residents' concerns moving forward. So I think the building architecture, you did an outstanding job. It was far exceeded my expectations on an architectural design for a car wash within our community, so thank you. Usually I'm on the other end of trying to figure out why somebody's trying to sneak that past and using some comparison to something next door. You haven't done that here, and you should be commended for that within this community and others, so thank you for doing that here today. Beyond that, I'm listening to what everybody has to say. I'm leaning in favor of the business with the conditions and the additional conditions that we've talked about. I'm looking to see what the Planning Commission feels about the 65 decibel level, if there's any truth to that, if that's an achievable level. And then I have one final parting question for staff. As you have decibel ratings at 65 or 70 at the property line, and then as that sound travels about 500 feet, does it typically diminish, and if so, at what ballpark-ish percentage? I know that's
It's really tough because some of it's dependent on wind and, wind direction. Sometimes if the wind blowing out of the west, it probably diminishes greatly. I did have them take some readings back further in the Winding Hollow just to see what the difference was there. And under ambient, they were around 50 in that area. So
Okay.
it went down basically from the 65 to 75 at the Port Washington Road to the back part of Winding Hollow down to like 50. So you're losing, 15, 20 decibels right there. So my guess is the same noise would probably dissipate the same level. But again, there's so many, it's so subjective just depending on all the environmental conditions, the humidity, wind, things like that. But my guess is it would be in that 50 to 55 range.
Can I comment on that?
please.
So I had my sound, we've done sound studies for every community. We did one for you. And I had my sound expert, Scott Rydell, look into this so at 500 feet, my vacuum operating equipment would be down to 30 decibels. My vacuum customer stations would be 19 decibels. I mean, we're talking nothing. And my car wash exit would be at 42 decibels. Now think about the exit now. That's facing Port Washington Road. I mean, that's not even the direction that people live in. So for all intensive purposes, our sound level is just, no one's going to hear anything because the road is going to knock us out at 500 feet. The Port Washington Road is going to make us, this is where we are located in Glendale, across from a motel. Literally, we share the same lot. No issues from the motel, none. I mean, you don't hear a thing. It was funny when we did that. The motel, the manager of the motel was kidding around with me because they have the old air conditioners in there, and their air conditioners are much louder than we are. So we have no issues.
I'm going to jump in because I'm a mechanical engineer during the day.
Allegedly.
I found a rare opportunity to contribute here. If 70 decibels is about equivalent to cars passing by, as I think we discussed earlier, 50 decibels is about the sound your refrigerator makes in your kitchen. And decibels are log scale, so for every 3 decibels it goes down, it's half the amount of sound energy. So I think those numbers Jack just rattled off is 15 to 20. Each time it goes down by 3, it's half the amount of sound energy. So it dissipates with the square of the distance, so the farther you are away. Twice as far away, you're 4 times quieter in general, unless the wind is blowing the wrong direction. And then the annoying phenomena that Commissioner Chorin has with I-43 is actually caused by an atmospheric inversion where you can actually get local amplification. But we won't go into that. There's a whole study by the Arizona Department of Transportation. I've got a paper if you're ever interested in reading it. So I think with the 70 decibels, if you make it lower, you won't be able to functionally measure it because what's happening on Port Road is worse. Certainly when they hit the engine brakes on I-43. Although it doesn't sound like you'd have any problems meeting 65, and even if you couldn't, we'd have no way of proving it was you or the passing truck, unfortunately. So that's my spiel on sound.
I support that.
Commissioner Bach.
One more question on the. Do you have any comparables? I know the Brookfield, Elm Grove. I think they're in kind of a much more. But are there any residential? Is it comparable to this and any of those sites? It seems like if I remember, there was a Walgreens in one in Elm Grove, and there was more.
Elm Grove is 650 feet to the closest resident. Brookfield's 80 because we're right on Capitol. There's residents in our backyard, and next to us. Pewaukee is 300 feet. We're next to a Panera across from Menards, but there's a whole community that lives just east of us. A whole huge community. And Glendale is about 300 feet because there's the whole community that lives right behind us. So, except for the one email that I have received regarding the customer playing their music, which can happen anywhere, we have received 0 noise complaints for our operation.
Thank you.
One more point. So,
Commissioner Jensis.
go ahead, I'll let you finish. Sorry about that. Just one quick thing to add. So, as John mentioned before, the loudest part of this entire operation is the exit, which is facing the busy road. In Pewaukee, where we have that just shy of 300 feet, we actually point that exit at condos, and it's not a problem. So, as was discussed, when we measured busy roads like Blue Mound in the past, it's in that 75 to 80 decibel range. So as we've been discussing, that 70 at the perimeter, I think, is probably even going to be hard to measure, especially on the east side. So as we kind of go to the west, just based on the design, it's going to be the quiet side of this development.
Go ahead.
Jack, a question about the Quick Trip. Is the automated car wash there governed by a hours of operation limit?
Yeah, they have to close by 10 p.m.
And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, there are at least one or two residents immediately to the east before you get to the river. Have there ever been any complaints from those residences?
There's been a lot of complaints from those residents, but it typically is not revolving to sound. They've had a lot of other issues there with garbage pickup and things like that. Recently at our common council meeting, some of them did address sound, but there wasn't any specifics to it. But it's been there now for, I don't know how many years, 5, 6 years. We never really received an actual complaint from them directly about sound. I know they brought it up at the council meeting, but there's other issues going on there that Quick Trip's trying to address other than the sound issue.
Okay. And then a question for the applicant related to hours of operation. I know you have a business model, so I don't want you to upset your business model, but do you have flexibility on the hours of operation? I'm trying to be sensitive to the neighbors in this case, so I'm going to ask that question.
I mean, we open at 7, which is when people go to work, which is pretty crucial to a lot of our businesses. Unlimited membership, so people can spend $20 a month and wash as often as they like. So 7 is pretty important for us to open. Weekends we open at 8, and we close at 8:30. I mean, if you wanted me to close at 8, I could do that every day, half of an hour earlier. But I mean, we offer car washing to our customers coming home from work, and the hours that were proposed, I don't know who could survive being open 7 hours a day, 5 hours on weekends.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And Commissioner Becky.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Lots of good discussion from the other commissioners and good points. Sound is a tricky thing to control, right? We have a relevant example, not in Mequon, but in Thiensville, that's very recent, with a local restaurant that came forward to the village board, and there were decibel limits that were imposed there, and they have a tracking mechanism on site at that facility. And when Homestead had a soccer or lacrosse game a couple of weeks ago, they exceeded their allowable decibel limits by like 20. And that is not even in the same community, and they can't control it. So it's a hard thing when there's surrounding sound to kind of pin it down and say, this is all you're going to get in this community. That doesn't mean that you aren't entitled to your peace and your expectation of living in a peaceful community. As is typical for me in my experience, I'm a little torn because I do trust that you come in peace, and it does sound like you're a good local caring business owner. And on the flip side, I also have been in the seats of the residents, and we oftentimes, where these types of issues come up, where there's a lot of feedback, it's because there's zoning that butts up against each other, where it's a resident and some sort of a business use, like 99 times out of 100, which is what you would expect. So I empathize with the folks that spoke. I commend the gentleman that looked through the code and found that specific code, because when I looked it up, I thought, oh crap, because it's not specific. It's not clear to me if I just pull up that specific code that it only applies to arrival corridor and town center. It just says development and design. So maybe I just missed the wording. So that was an interesting thing for you to find. So well done in doing your research. All of that to say, I'm still a little torn, and I would like to hear if anyone who hasn't spoken has any other considerations. I would be interested in hearing my fellow commissioners. Thanks, Steph.
Commissioner Hawley.
Sure. I would agree with Becky. So I think when we have a lot of people that come and speak out of frustration, or, in where they're not supportive of a new business coming in, it's usually because of zoning. And if we just look at the zoning, this is permitted. So, you know, you have to realize you are right up against Port Washington Road and something is going to go in there. I don't think this is necessarily going to be super loud. I think they're trying to be good neighbors. I'm in support of the business.
Are there any other comments from the commission? I heard a couple of what sounded like amendments along the way. So in preparation for someone maybe making a motion, I'll reiterate them. One was to potentially change the trees, I believe, on the west and south sides to something more like an evergreen instead of a deciduous tree. And then I think seems to be a universal agreement that the piped-in music probably isn't for Mequon. I'm not sure. Do we have it anywhere else? I can't recall.
I don't recall.
Not where someone's asked for it specifically.
Yeah, I don't recall any other user that has them either, but.
Um,
And the only other thing I know there was a question about changing the decibel levels or not. Maybe you could segregate it a little bit and require a different level at the west property line versus the east property line, because if the door's in the front and the noise is coming from the front, once the building is built, I would think that the west property line would be the most quiet, so that maybe we could say 65 at the west and then 70 at the rest. You know, as an option. I know Alderman Strelchuk was looking for some sort of commentary regarding that. That could be a suggestion.
I'll go ahead.
Commissioner Lemke.
I hadn't spoken yet, so somebody asked. I follow along the lines of this is right next to Port Washington Road. Something's going to go in there. I think the ambient noise is going to be louder than this building's going to add to that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve per staff recommendations with the addition of evergreen trees on the west and no piped-in music.
West and south or west?
West and south.
There's a motion. Is there
Second.
a second? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll. Sorry, public hearing's over.
Okay. Commissioner Bach,
I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Hi.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Mayor Nerben.
Aye.
Vote passes 7-1.
Thank you. Congratulations, Jillies.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Christ Alone Lutheran Church. Applicant is seeking a minor request to allow for a temporary tent for the property located at 10001 North Cedarburg Road.
Good
Maybe a
evening,
brief staff. Oh,
Commissioners.
is Director Tallison going to take this one?
I am.
All right, go ahead.
With the vacancy with Papula's position, I offered to take more, and Jack said I was lucky enough to get this one.
Maybe the easy one.
So Christ Alone Church is located on Cedarburg Road. The last couple summers, they've been approved for a temporary use permit to allow for some outdoor activity. The types of uses that they're doing there is a vacation Bible camp that happens once in the summer, a soccer camp that also happens once in the summer. They're looking to continue to allow a Sunday service, outdoor service, just once a month. Their location in Thiensville also offers the Sunday service, so members have the option to go to the indoor in Thiensville or the outdoor in Mequon. And then there's an annual church picnic that just happens once in the summer. So the two events that would likely require some overflow parking are the Sunday morning services and the annual church picnic. When staff reviewed the temporary use permit, it essentially asks for a tent, as well as the ability to do some overflow parking. We were comfortable with all aspects of their proposal. We just put a condition on that we didn't want to see the overflow parking occurring in the open space. We do believe that given the limited number of larger events that would have the peak parking, there are some other options that the ownership or the congregation can explore. I did reach out to the police chief to talk about parking on the street. They have not historically, for any user in Mequon, consistently allowed week in and week out parking on the street, so they would not be inclined to do that. But for perhaps, a one-time event, that is something that the applicant can pursue. So the applicant is essentially appealing, and the zoning code gives them the right to appeal that one condition from staff. Otherwise, this would have been approved at an administrative level, to see if the Planning Commission would support the continuation of overflow parking. The site plan that Jack put up kind of shows that open space area, essentially in this front location. It was our recommendation that the tent be moved into the open space area to free up about 16 stalls here, where that tent would otherwise be located. And we did talk for future seasonal events such as these that maybe over the course of this next year, they work with staff to look at some ways that we could create some more efficient parking for them, and perhaps even add some parking in some locations that wouldn't require a huge impact on their site plan. There's probably some areas where we could add a bay or add an extra row of parking without having to do another drive aisle or another driveway access. So that's the suggestion here today, that there's other opportunities for those few time events for the overflow parking and to not impact the open space. That soil where the open or the overflow parking is, if used too often, can get compacted, and it essentially would act as impervious space. And could trigger stormwater management requirements, and then of course the pollutants from the cars can be detrimental to that open space. Thank you.
Would the applicant care to respond or make a plea?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Planning Commission. We appreciate the opportunity here. A couple things just to clarify. I guess some of the recommendation, or one of the recommendations as far as moving the tent to the grass, if it's moved to the left, when it rains, that becomes ankle deep water. So if we have a tent there, it makes it hard to utilize that. We are putting this tent up. We did put it up last year, and we would love to be able to do the same again this year. Due to COVID, we have some members that worship with us just down the street and are not worried about coming inside of a building. We do have some members that would prefer to worship outside, and we put one corner of the sides down. The rest of the tent is wide open so that members can sit outside in the parking lot on the grass and participate. That's for worship services. I did want to clarify as well. This summer we plan 7 outdoor worship services. We do have a soccer camp, as was mentioned. We do plan on having a cornhole or bags league, and then a market, and then a couple of evening concerts as well, or evening music events. Those we don't see necessarily needing overflow parking. Maybe a church service or two. It would be nice if all the church services we had that problem of overflow parking, but being realistic, it's probably going to be 2. The church picnic, we would definitely need that, and then we have another event that would require that. As a good neighbor within this community, we do notify our neighbors up and down Elmdale that we are putting up the tent, and we do welcome them to join us if they wish. And last year we had a very good turnout of neighbors up and down the street and throughout the subdivision there that would join us outside. The other thing I know when I was discussing that with several folks here, the possibility if we were to move the tent where the overflow lawn parking is, we do have elderly folks that would then have to navigate uneven terrain. The other concern I would have is also an eco one as well, that if you have that much activity under a tent, ground will be trampled, and you're not going to have the ability to have rain or sun throughout the summer, so that ground will end up turning into dirt. If we're allowed to park, it's going to be on a Sunday, and it will be for a couple hours. One alternative that we could offer is that we could rotate parking. We're only looking at, I did outline that there's 45 spots, and that is just, we used 20 spots probably last year to maximum when we had overflow. And we'd be willing to be able to move the cars around for each event so they're not parked at the same spot on the grass. I know one of the alternatives that was brought up was to park in our cemetery across the street. That is a horseshoe gravel driveway, which would then present the same dilemma that I'm now appealing as far as parking goes. We'd have to park on the grass in the cemetery. That would not work. We are, and we strive to be good neighbors, as we have evidenced here. I know when the parking lot was torn up, our parking lot became your parking lot until the paving and all the activities were done here. I know our parking lot here at church is also hosts a Taste of Mequon for residents, the parades. So again, we are all in as far as the community goes here. We're not trying to be obstinate. We're not trying to be a pain here. We're just trying to fulfill our mission and serve the community. And parking on the grass, there's pros and cons to it, but we're willing to help. That's the only spot we have that we can see, or we're not having people cross Cedarburg Road.
I have a question. When you said you had this tent the previous year, was it in the same location as proposed?
Yes.
And a question for staff, did we actually receive any complaints about parking on the grass?
No, I don't recall. No. We have the COVID proclamation that protected that as well.
Okay. True.
Yeah, there were no stipulations last year or conditions.
But we didn't have any complaints. I'm not aware of any complaints regarding the overflow parking on site, or any complaints about maybe parking that occurred on the street if the police department had authorized that.
Okay. Commissioner Strelchek.
I'm very supportive of what the applicant is saying here. If there's a way that we can say yes to what their requests are, I'd like to do so today. This is a church group. How many days do you feel that you'd need the overflow parking on the grass out of the?
I'm estimating, looking at all the activities that we have, probably 5 or 6 at the most.
I think 5 or 6 days parking on the grass really isn't.
And it would be on a Sunday typically.
On a Sunday isn't really a deal breaker for me. I think that our parks see parking on the grass during, we recently had some lacrosse games mixed in with another event that the city was hosting, and there were people parked all up and down inside the ditches at our parks. I'm not letting that set precedent for everybody in the city gets to park on the grass, but I think a religious institution that's been a strong community member, I think the purpose of this is still COVID focused. From a COVID safety standpoint, that was brought up without being prompted. I know COVID is still here. I know that protocols have shifted. I also know a good portion of my friend circles individuals who've come down with it recently and caught COVID. So I understand that if you want to run a worship service on a Sunday, if people wish to sit outside of that tent to feel safe to be able to participate in that, it's a quality of life option and a reason to come worship and celebrate your religion. I would be very supportive of this as the applicant has requested. So whatever we can shift to accommodate this group based on those requests, I'm supportive of it right now. Yeah.
Is this a 1-year approval, or what are we, how does that work?
Yes, they would be required to get new temporary use permit next year if they choose to do the activities again.
We did last year. Absolutely.
I would fully support this and throw out a number of, you get 10 days to use the overflow parking so that it doesn't turn into
every day,
an everyday kind of thing.
Sure.
I think that's a reasonable.
And I would ask them to, if they can move the cars around a little bit to keep it from the same area. I would trust you want to keep your lawn not turning into concrete also, so.
And I might just ask that the applicant then provide us with the dates of those 10-day events. Otherwise, it would be difficult for us to track.
No
But
problem.
then we can just keep that as part of the record.
So buried in all that's a complicated motion.
Yeah. How do we want to craft that motion based on what they said versus what you said and get it all in there? I do have one question on the evening events, the evening concerts. The piped in music or the amplified music needs to end at 8 according to this. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, and I did consult with the applicant. They were comfortable with that time frame.
Even with the 2 events at 8 o'clock? Yep. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a conflict that we were hearing that might come up later.
No, we've already stated that previously.
Staff, can you help me craft a?
Here, I think I'm following it
For
here.
the overflow parking? Sure.
I think
go
I
ahead.
got 10 days,
Yep.
rotate parking at their discretion to not kill their own grass, and provide staff an advance notice of the dates. Maybe won't have them all at once, but I think you said you planned on 5 or 6. I think we're going to allow up to 10, so it gives you some flexibility to move them around. But 30 days advance notice, fine. You can't.
It's
You
virtual.
can't
It
plan
doesn't
it.
even need to be that.
Okay,
We can
not
work.
that specific. You
We'll
can
work out a
work together.
system. Yeah. And then I'm assuming condition number 3, or I'm sorry, condition number 2. Are you altering that?
Are we reading special event 10 shall be in open space? Yeah, I like it where it was last year, based on what their description is. I don't want people in ankle deep water or tripping. Yeah, my assumption is they'll probably come back next year. If we have complaints, we'll need to address them. This isn't a 20-year request. So that's my motion.
Second.
If that's clear to staff, I think it works for everyone. I think we've got all of it. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't hear any. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Christian Presley, Elon Hang. This is applicant is seeking a building and site plan amendment approval to allow a new building for the property located at 10328 North Wauwatosa Road, otherwise known as Big Shot Sports. Maybe a brief staff report.
Sure. This is the driving range facility on Wauwatosa Road. Just have the map showing what they're basically doing is they have an existing clubhouse. They want to tear that down, and then they're building a new one, shifting it about 50 feet to 60 feet to the east. And then they're going to have to shift their T-line the same distance over to accommodate the building. In terms of the location of the building, it's further away from the road. It's more compliant with the setback. The tee boxes will still be, I measured about 300 feet to the property line to the east, so shouldn't be any issues with any balls going over. There's also a tree line along that property line, so that would protect any balls from going over the property line if anybody can hit it that far. Other than that, the building design itself, we were working on that for a while. I do have some renderings in there for you. I just want to show you this as well, because one of the conditions pertains to the existing. This is the There's also an existing barn on the facility. It's hard to kind of see from here, but it's a red barn now that matches what's out there now, but the current renderings, which I'll bring up, are a little different in terms of the colors and the style. So one of the conditions we added was that they'd have to paint that barn to match the existing within a year of occupancy. In terms of the building, we've worked on a couple different iterations with them. This is the final product. This is a LP Smart Side product with some brick around the entranceways. The one issue we did have is the rear elevation, basically the east elevation that you can only see once you're in the course. This is it right here. Basically, it's just a big blank wall, and that's because there's the 5 golf simulators. That's where the screens go. We talked about maybe trying to add some transoms to that just to break it up. This is a ICF building, insulated concrete form building, so that gets awfully expensive. So our thoughts were to either maybe add some vines to the building or add some greenery. Or the other thing is we could incorporate some yardage markers for the tee boxes out there as well, some sort of combination just to break up that elevation. But other than that, we're supportive of the improvements to the facility and recommend approval.
All right, would the applicant wish to speak on any of the matters?
In terms of the east elevation, the owner does plan to put seating along that wall for the golfers outside, correct?
Yeah. We will fill that space up because right behind there will actually be the new tee lines, and we want to make sure we can incorporate some seating back there with some umbrellas to just kind of, it'll give them some shade too. So,
but I have no objections to doing something like maybe some lattice with some ivy or something in different intervals with seating in between, something to give some type of aesthetic appeal back there. There's no issues, and I'm sure I could work with Jack on making that happen.
Sounds reasonable. You have a place for people to sit. You want it to look nice.
yeah, and you know, I actually had some local artists actually said that they would like to paint a mural back there if it was allowed, but something like that I would definitely want to follow up before I do that. But some local artists actually want to just come and just build, paint like a greenery scene or actually one of the favorite holes. But that's just, you know, some ideas that was going out there. So, yeah.
And he does plan on for the barn, if need be, we can paint it the same color as that building, although they are very drastically different in style. This building is that style due to expenses, making it as small. The structure is obviously going to be less expensive. ICF used to be very expensive, but considering that everything else has gone through the roof, ICF isn't really that expensive anymore, believe it or not. And given the longevity of the cost for heating and cooling, I really do think ICF is going to be used quite often, quite more than what it has been in the past because of the price, getting narrowed down. That building is going to be next to a mini golf course, and in my eyes, it might look nice to have a red with white trim barn next to a mini golf, feature, a bunch of different little mini golf courses next to it. It kind of might add a little bit more aesthetic appeal. But, like I said, I'm sure the owner won't have any problems with painting the same color as the clubhouse building, but I think they don't absolutely have to be the same color, because they can kind of be their own entity to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they have to be the same color. I just think they should be compatible. I don't know if the red and the gray actually are compatible. And I guess if there is an application in for a mini golf course, we'll review that at the time, and then if they want to incorporate into the theme of the course, we would have to do that. But we would have a condition on there that they would have to do something within a year, one way or another.
Commissioner Bach.
Any food or drinks served in this, or is this just simulation?
So, in this new building, we want to incorporate a small kitchen, and we do serve alcohol, and not liquor, but just alcohol beverages, and just sports drink and wine.
You mean, so not alcohol, but alcohol beverages? Does that mean like beer and wine, or
wine and beer?
Liquor license is separate than it.
Yeah, we have a beer license, but not a liquor license.
Got it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Strelchak.
Jack, I'm sorry to disagree with you on the second item in a row. I don't mind a red barn anywhere within the city of Mequon, period. That's a pretty strong blanket statement for me. We grew up with red barns. We had a couple yellow ones. But I want to say, 80 to 90% of the barns were red back in the day. So I think being in the graphics industry, you know, for many years, I know red does go with charcoal gray and white, so red and white would go. If this statement was to address maybe a paint peeling or a poor condition, I would support, you know, a paint job on the red, so it was a fresh coat of red to go with the architecture here, but I'm fine with the color. I'm not loving the architecture. I'll be completely honest with you there. I think it's really kind of plain and understated. I would like to see a little bit more from this. I understand that you're a driving range, but you're adding different things and different features with the golf simulations and a somewhat sizable building. I'd prefer to see that architecture have some breakup on the outside, really more of an entrance feature that's a little bit different. I'm not looking to take your expenses out of whack, but
I was thinking about putting some lattice and ivy on the front as well too. That would help break it up as well.
I'm not thinking ivy in sense and lattice. I'm thinking more definition to the architecture, just different kind of, I'm not an architect, breaking up the straight lines a little bit.
Someone who is right next to you.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for him to chime in. I saw him move his hand, but I'm waiting for the rest of it to follow.
It's kind of funny because he's saying exactly what I was going to say.
Oh,
you know, when I
then you finish technically.
When I
Tagger it.
When I think of a barn, I think of a red structure. So I have no problem with the barn being red. And frankly, the building is rather plain, kind of like a. I don't want to be insulting, and I just wonder if there can be different. You know, you've added some brickwork, I believe, right, to kind of break up the siding, but it's all in one plane, and the canopy doesn't do much for me. So I don't know how we would go forward with this. I mean, I'd like to work with them a little bit on the looks of the building. But
it's tricky with the golf simulators, right? Because you have to have, everything has to be enclosed, and you know, you have to do something kind of on the outside because you've got to have, when you're putting all that technology in there, it's tricky with as far as windows and everything. So you'd have to use your creativity and put something on the outside that would make it nicer.
With the battle between form and function is definitely overpowering form.
Well, right.
But
right.
you know, it's.
I mean, it looks a little brutal. You know.
I understand that. It's geared with you know, price in mind, also with the function more so than form. You know, we could change it to gable roofs. I mean, you know, it's you know, I think that it's the minimalist look. Maybe adding some more on the front to break up the appearance on the front, I think would be a fair middle ground. Maybe the larger structure in back to have that be more brick on the front facade of the rear section. That would help to break it up as well too. The flat roof, that is part of the ICF system. So I'm trying to build something for him that, you know, 10 years down the road he's saving money on versus you know, others. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we did have a couple conversations, kind of the same line you guys did. I think where we kind of thought maybe we didn't want to be overly too assertive is that this is a relatively small building, so it's tough to make it. I think what your vision is without making it more massive, and I think that's where we struggled a little bit as well. But if you want to have a condition where, you know, we sit down with you and Jim and we try to hammer some of these things out, that's fine as well. We could try to work through that.
I mean, I thought went through my mind of, you know, kind of replicating the gambrel look of the barn, but that doesn't work well with that structure. I guess I would be receptive to working with them, with Jim, on tweaking the building a little bit.
And if I could add to, I think Secret Garden was right next door to us, and they had a similar kind of build. That's what we thought we might kind of just kind of fit it in, kind of similar to, because they.
My look was straight function first, and then add a little bit of form to it after the function. That was my flow there.
Yeah.
And I did have an original with an acrylic EFIS finish. Jack is not happy with the acrylic ephes finish, and that's fine. I know it's a little bit passe. I was trying to keep the cost down a little bit, but the lap siding, the Eldorado stone, the thin brick, I think if that thin brick were to be added on that facade of the larger section in the rear all the way across, I think that would help break it up quite a bit. It is a flat roof building, and I understand my thoughts as well too. Well, maybe the entranceway, I could put a gable on the entryway, help break it up a little bit. That's a possibility.
Maybe it's as simple as that. Working with that canopy.
Yeah.
That becomes a little bit more of an architectural feature that would, make us a little bit more comfortable. I frankly don't have any issue with the east wall being blank. Nobody sees it. They're going to be sitting up against it. So maybe we work with staff on the canopy.
Yeah, I guess that's the commission either can bring back to have the architecture come back. I don't think we want to design it on the fly, so either we would bring it back or we could just have it approved with the condition that Jim and Marty work together with the applicant to try to make the design a little bit more available.
Yeah, let's go for that. And if you can't, then we can always bring it back, but try and keep it pointed in one direction. Yeah. I agree on the barn, by the way. I like red barns, but sorry.
Okay.
Should we put a big smiley face on it?
we can stop short of the smiley face, but only if it incorporates into the mini golf and you have to hit it into the smile somewhere.
That was my thought exactly. Red barn next to a mini golf course, windmills, and all sorts of stuff. It's just going to fit.
So I'd make a motion for approval, allowing for a red barn, and with conditions that the applicant works with staff and the two architects on the commission to come up with a design. If an agreement can't be made, that at that point would come back to planning commission for review.
Second.
I'm pretty comfortable that that'll happen.
So we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further comment? Commissioner Schaefer?
Just to be mindful of the cost, because I think it's a cool thing. I think it's wonderful that you're considering investing in that property that's been a little bit dilapidated for a while. So I'm grateful to you, and I'm very, as we all are, right, aware that costs continue to skyrocket. So it's just I think that it's just to ask of Marty to just be mindful of that.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, and if I should add, this is a business that has been seasonal for us, and it's always been seasonal for this location here. It's been here for almost 30 years now since I've been here. I've been here for 5 summers now, and it's been tough this is actually the kind of building that's going to help us open all year round and be able to provide all the things that we would want to from having all the golfers that need whatever they need in Wisconsin here, which is a place safe balls. So, so that we're excited for this too. We'll be willing to work and figure out how to get this, addition so that we can definitely provide a great space for everyone. So.
Yeah, the inside has 6 very large driving bay simulators. It's gonna be a nice facility. I might actually start golfing on it.
What's exciting
Becoming a
also,
fan.
and I'm a big advocate for junior golf. I want to grow the game, and in our barn we actually have 2 golf simulators that we actually turned a storage room into, and the space is wide enough where we put 2 golf simulators in there. And we started out this winter. We opened up a junior cup. They call it the junior cup golf for juniors from 3rd graders to 8th graders, just trying to get them ready for high school. I opened up the gates to allow people to sign up, and we had 36 kids within 2 days. And then I had to lock it up as we actually expected only 16, and we want to lock it up to 16, but they exceeded my expectations. And then after I locked it up, we had 40 more applicants come through. We don't have enough space for juniors. We don't have enough space for golfers, so it's really.
Thank you. I think we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Any opposed? I don't think there was. It was unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And last item on the agenda, Point Real Estate for Orchards of Mequon. The applicant is seeking rezoning recommendation from R3C2 single family to R3C2 with TDR PUD, transfer development rights, planned unit development, and the concept plan approval to allow for a 17-lot single family residential cluster development for the property located on the north side of Donjas Bay Road, approximately 800 feet west of Wauwatosa Road, which will be known as Baroque Estates if it's approved.
Yes, this was in front of you guys in February for consultation. We had a good discussion on the issue of using the TDR credits here and trying to comply as best we could with some of the requirements of the CGO. The applicant did come back with an updated plan that I think addressed most of staff's critique as well as the commissioners. As you can see up on the far north end, this is the connection in the enclave. They did adjust the road to save the Baroque, keep the name intact, and so that's been taken care of. They've also increased the open space. There's only one area we didn't get the open space changed, so we're still requesting this area here be at 30 feet to match the rest of the open space around the perimeter. Again, this is a TDR site, so we have a little bit higher density than we're typically used to, but remember this was 25 acres of open space has been preserved basically across the street in this case. So this will be a rezoning. This will go in front of the Common Council for first reading next month and a public hearing the month after that. So we're supportive of the changes made and we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant choose to say anything or?
Sure, I'll just keep it real short since we were here in February. I'm Joe Bukovic with Point Real Estate. Glad to be back in front of you again. The one area that Jack pointed out behind lots 2 and 3, we kept that at 20 feet of open space just because they abut a property owned by Wisconsin Gas that's used as a metering location for their high pressure gas main. And we thought the area would be better utilized in the lots. Just want to point that out to you. And then there was one other item that was brought up in the staff report about looping water main. And I was from our southeast property line to Wauwatosa, and I was able to talk to engineering this afternoon, and we were able to work it out that we'll construct it, and the water utility will pay us back. So we're acceptable with that.
Okay, thanks. Any comments from the commission? No one wants to.
Just a quick
Commissioner Strelchak.
I'll be very quick. I understand the purpose of the TDR credits and I support it. As we entertain as a city TDR credits moving forward, I'd like to establish in the TDR transfer a ratio of X% within the development. I struggle with the smaller sites adding 5. I did before. I think the applicant made concessions that the city has asked for. I think they made this work. I think that these TDR credits have been floating out there for a while, and this is the appropriate receiving site for it. So I am voting in favor of it. But I've seen a struggle on Common Council, and I've struggled personally a little bit with some of the smaller sites receiving the TDRs versus maybe an 80 lot or a 50 lot parcel absorbing 5. It doesn't feel like much, but these smaller sites it does. So just a statement of requests as we entertain these moving forward, that we consider a ratio for TDR transfers to be permissive, but keep that percentage smaller.
Yeah, we will keep that in mind. I'm reluctant to think that we're going to have another TDR project anytime soon because I think the difficulty with the only one we've done is the ability to use these credits somewhere. It's always no matter if you recall, the developer on Riverland Estates tried to use some, and that was a 60 acre, 5 acre yield development, and the neighbors didn't want it there. Enclave did use several of them to the north here, but then the neighbors were objecting to the extra densities there as well. So yeah, if we ever use TDR credits again, we'll definitely look at some sort of ratio, but I just don't know if the market's in that position right now.
So I have a question. How many are left, assuming we use the 5? I think they're down to 1. Right?
There's one left.
TDR credit left.
I think
and when
Mr.
we
Alpha
cash our last chip, I think we probably should have an overall discussion on it, because it's been more difficult, I think, than was originally anticipated to use them. We're happy to take them.
Yes, we were happy to take them all.
I think at least twice on open record, I've referred to them as magic beans. We want the magic beans, but we don't want to ever use them. So when we exhaust that last one, we should have a discussion on what we want that to look like going forward. And
Yeah.
do we want a policy? Do we want to get rid of the policy?
Or we want to,
modify
yeah,
it,
the policy is, that was probably 2004 or 3 when that policy was put in place. So I think majority of the councils knew at that point. So there was never really a discussion with the current body on how that policy should actually function. I think it was predates me in terms of being here, but I did review some of the minutes, and there was a big discussion on to actually have receiving sites identified or not, and they went with the market, and I think that was part of the issue, is that it just was kind of left open, and neighbors always have an issue with having an additional density next to them. I mean,
maybe since we only have one left, we don't have to wait to have that discussion. Not immediately, but sometime later in the year when we can work it into the work plan. I think it's a worthwhile discussion. It's almost been 20 years, it sounds like, since it was created. So
yeah, and
certainly many new people are there.
One other comment, I know that they talked about that 20-foot now. I understand, and I don't know if they're going to keep it or not, but I understand that they're trying to relocate that high-pressure gas main. So I don't know if they'll eventually sell that parcel for development to someone or if they'll hang on to it. I was told by engineering that they're looking to relocate this, I think in Wauwatosa Road somewhere. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with the existing and that station, but it could eventually be sold, I guess, as an individual lot to someone. So we'd still prefer to have that extra 10 feet there if possible. So
I think that's written the way it's written up in the staff conditions.
Yes.
So unless someone modifies it, that's how it'll get passed. All right, bringing it back. Any further comments? Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Since it's the last vote of the night, let's go with the roll call.
Video.
I'm ready. Commissioner Gentis.
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bach.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke.
Aye.
Alderman Stralcheck.
Aye.
Mayor Nurbin.
Aye.
Vote passes.
Passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's just announcements. Here we got one more item. Next meeting, Monday, June 27th, 6 p.m. Hope that works for everyone, or at least a quorum of you. There's just one more motion needed.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you.
it was Kim's idea on the